So this is an original Ss Dagger. It wouldn't be unusual for a piece like this to attract around the, I would say, 6,000 to 8,000 euro mark. So over here, we've got a blade with a motto.
Hey guys, bringing you something completely different this time. This is the first video in a new series that I'm bringing to you, which is going to be looking at military artifacts. I'm going to be joined alongside Gerard here, who runs the company Whispers from the Past Militaria. If you're interested in reaching out to him, please do look at the description below for his email. And we'll be looking this week at Hitler Youth Knives, also an Ss Dagger, and something else to look forward to right at the end of the video, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Let's begin.
Yeah, so that was a collection of knives that I recently acquired. It was a lifelong collection from a guy who's actually a politician who's situated in Canberra. So I purchased all of those. I was able to evaluate them, and I then on-sold those to another dealer. So they're actually for sale at the moment, and it's actually pretty rare to be able to find such a lifelong, vast collection of the HJs. So we'll touch on the various points of the historical differences between the makes and the transitions. But basically, you've got early pieces, you've got transitional pieces, and then you've got the later pieces. So the quality dips and dives with the daggers. I guess at this point, it's also important to say that the Hitler Youth knife was the only knife that was actually a non-ceremonial blade. So apart from the bayonets that they used to put on the Kar 98Ks and various other machetes and combat knives, all of the other daggers like the NSKK daggers, SA daggers, SS daggers, I've got an example of an SS dagger that I'll show later on, they were all ceremonial. So they were effectively awards that were bestowed upon the recipient, and it was a big deal when you received your particular dagger for whatever group you're involved in. So with these particular pieces, as Hans showed before, kids effectively use them as scouting knives. So they were used to skin rabbits, they were used for hunting. The guys used to have competitions by seeing who could basically, be the best crack shot with the knives. So if you look at that illustration there, you can clearly see the arrows pointing to a HJ knife that's wedged into a tree. And the grip plate's been smashed off, and you can see the swastika in the middle in the diamond there that's still intact. So they had a good old time with these knives, basically using them. And as you can imagine, in the early 1930s, right up until the end of the war, because these were basically produced in the interwar period, from the beginning right to the very last day of the conflict. So it would have been a pretty big deal. So receiving one of these knives as a kid would have been like getting your first car. Pretty much, it was a really, really, really big deal. And for what they are, the craftsmanship was pretty exceptional.
Awesome. So we can see here on these other pictures that you've got like different these images showing specific sections of this is the scabbard, for instance. Here you can see the rivets. As you can see, it's leather and different things here. Hanger, scabbard body. You can see it talks about here the diamond with the swastika in it. You've got the different types of blades with the ricasso.
So I'll just pop up an original piece in the camera view.
Okay, here we go.
So if you've got an issue seeing this, I've just cut myself before I jumped on, so you'll have to excuse my my bandages on my on my arms. I didn't cut myself with a Hitler Youth knife, that's for sure. So this is an original, very early piece. And this piece actually features an anodized scabbard, which is a lot rarer than the painted scabbards. So the anodization process is basically a process that almost bakes on the paint, and it's almost like a chemical reaction, I guess you could say. So the way that these age over time is significantly different to, say, a painted scabbard, which we'll illustrate next. So over here, we've got a blade with a motto. As you can see, this is a middle to earlier piece.
So that motto means blood and honor, I believe, correct?
Yes, yeah, correct. So in terms of valuing a piece, generally speaking, from a collector's point of view, different people like different things. So it's sort of horses for courses. So some people prefer an earlier dagger without the motto. Some people prefer the transitional ones. Some people prefer the later ones. The transitional ones do tend to be a bit more valuable, and I'll explain why a bit later. But as Hans was explaining before with regards to the ricasso, a lot of the earlier pieces don't have the ricasso. So the ricasso is a section of metal over here which is not sharpened and is thickened, and that basically provides stabilization for the knife. So that was just an improvement that they put in later on. And you'll find that in a lot of modern knives, you actually won't find a ricasso because it is expensive. It adds additional workmanship and time and effort, and also a portion of the blade, which is this section here, as I'll show on the next piece that I'll be illustrating, is not sharpened as well. So it does remove a bit of the cutting edge. So on this particular piece, as I said earlier, it is an early piece. It's been extensively used. If I zoom in here, or if I show the handle, you can see where it's been used. The handles are composed out of, it's wear. So basically the boy that would have been having it would have been gripping it, and the pointer finger would have eroded the grip plates. The grip plates are made out of a material called bakelite, which I suppose is a prototype to modern plastics. So very, very durable, a lot more durable than modern plastics, but it doesn't have that same flexibility that you would see. So I'll try and zoom in on the maker mark over here. Yep. That's good. So this is by a fabricator by the name of Lungstrass. Lungstrass is quite a rare maker. I'll add that none of the HJs were rare as such, like you get with a few of the other pieces, because millions of them were produced. But this is a piece that's less seen out in the community, and if this was in mint condition, it could attract up to €2,000. In the current state where it's at the moment, I'd say conservatively, it's worth around $800 in that sort of format. And they're becoming rarer and rarer as well as the markets open up. A lot of the Middle Eastern countries have started to attract attention. Russians are very, very interested in buying these. They're not interested in their own relics. They tend to collect the German stuff. And the Brits are very popular. The Brits tend to not be interested in their own stuff, and they tend to collect the German stuff. And also in Australia as well, everybody tends to collect the German stuff.
Talk about the diamond logo there in the center with the swastika in there. Did they all have those?
Yes, they did. So that diamond in that particular configuration is the standard that they used for the Hitler Jugend, or the Hitler Youth. So as we progress throughout the series of our talks, I'll talk about all of the different logos and signifiers, but that was a specific signifier. So you'll see that on other Hitler Youth items, belts, standards, other pieces of equipment. And I'll dig up some photos also of a very, very rare Hitler Youth Leader's Dagger.
Oh,
so what they used to do is they would signify hierarchy by providing different daggers and different formats. So if you're an officer, you would have a specific type of dagger. If you weren't an officer, you would have a different kind of dagger, and so on and so forth. And they would become more and more elaborate as you would escalate through the hierarchy. Yeah, so that's that piece. So do we have any questions before I progress to the next piece, guys?
I've got one myself, if no one else has got any for the moment. So you were saying about the ricasso that in the early stages they didn't have it because it was just wasn't added then. Then they added it in later on during in the later period in the war. But then you mentioned that it's more expensive and harder to add a ricasso in. And you'd think like during the war when they were making them, they haven't got the time and the money to invest into putting in such a ricasso. So why did they keep putting in the ricasso right up until the end of the war, or did they stop doing that as well? Like what kind of things did they stop doing to like cheapen on the blade as the war progressed and resources became stretched?
Yeah, look, that's a really good question, and that actually leads into our next piece. So before I dive into that one, I'll quickly do an introduction of this particular piece. So this particular piece over here, you'll see immediately, just from how it shows up on camera, has a painted scabbard. It doesn't have an anodized scabbard. So that's one of the first indicators that you look at when you're trying to determine age. You can also see that with this, sorry, just put into the field of the camera a bit better. You can see that with this particular piece, you don't have as much use or as much of an indent here on the bakelite. So that one there retains most of the diamonds, these crosshatch diamonds. So if I zoom in there, you can see that the grip in the hand would have been basically facilitated by these diamonds that the kids would have hung onto.
Yep.
This one's also got a bit of a recessed diamond. You can see a sort of countersunk in there, which is a sign of age. They have like a spring that sort of juts out either side that holds that diamond in. So these can pop out on examples that have been thrashed and bashed against trees. Now, if we take the scabbard off, you'll see that the blade is in near mint condition. These marks here that you see along the blade, they're not from usage. They're known as runner marks. So within the actual, and you'll see on the page that Hans was showing before, you've actually got a system of springs that actually physically hold the dagger in. So that's basically just occurred on the blade there. That can be polished out, although I wouldn't recommend it. You never polish these sorts of pieces, and I'll explain why later. This one has an edge on it. So when these kids were received their dagger in the ceremonies, they were actually blunt, so they would actually have to sharpen them themselves. So that was one of the skills that they would have to work on. And you can also see here that this one still retains the guard, which connects with the throat of the scabbard when the dagger's sheathed. Whereas this one either never had one or it's lost its guard at some point. But I'd probably hazard a guess and say that it's lost the guard. Now you'll see the markings are distinctly different on this particular piece. It's got what's known as an RZM marking and also the year of manufacture. So that, I don't know if you can see that, guys.
There we go. Oh, yeah, perfect. There you go. So it says M719 and then the year 1941. So we know obviously that's made in the year 1941. And
exactly.
You've got the RZM in the little circle, and most of the blades will have that kind of RZM in the circle there.
Yes, I'll explain what that is. So that RZM code basically corresponds to a maker's list. So if anybody wants to email me after the show, I'm happy to provide maker's lists as well. If anybody wants to basically get onto the research, or if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to assist. So that corresponds to the maker, and a lot of you will probably recognize the maker when I flip it around. You've probably got a lot of these knives in your kitchen or in restaurants. So you see here you've got the Wusthof maker mark and the Wusthof branding there as well with a Solingen. So a lot of these knives originate from a town in Germany by the name of Solingen. Solingen has been producing knives since, I believe, and don't quote me on this because I could be wrong chronologically, but I'm pretty sure, around the Middle Ages they were producing swords during all of the religious conquests and wars back in time, and they're still producing the finest cutlery and edge weapons even today. And I've actually got a bit of a treat, which I'll show you later, but I've got a modern knife that originates from Solingen from a company by the name of Boker, who is also famed for making a lot of the blades, including the Ss Daggers and also the HJs. But going back into the question before you had about the Ricasso, Hans, so basically it comes down to practicality and expense. So when you have a look at this particular blade here versus this one, you can see the difference between the stabilization there. Yep. So the Wusthof over here is obviously going to withstand impacts, slicing, dicing, cutting, survival activities. It's going to be a lot more durable. So if you're taking into account that they were producing millions and millions of these, that single additional piece that they have there, that fortified piece, is going to significantly increase the amount of material that's required,
right,
to craft that knife. And I'll explain why that is. This particular piece over here originates from an earlier point of time before they implemented the RZM. I'm not going to pronounce what RZM actually stands for because I'll totally butcher it. But once again, I can provide fact sheets for anybody who's curious. There was a time in history where basically the Chancellery and the Nazi Party became sick of inconsistency with manufacturing protocols. So they implemented a specific organization which basically assigned licenses for production and for distribution for absolutely everything. So it got to a point where everything ranging from the tableware to toys to picture frames. So for example, I've got original photos of soldiers from that time, and they've got an RZM code on the back. So that basically allows you to identify who the maker was. And it's actually become an important piece of ephemera in the sense that back then you would have neglected it, but now for people who are interested historically in this sort of stuff, you can actually track that RZM code and find out exactly who made it, when it was made, what month it was made, where the factory was located. Cool. Yeah, so it provides a lot of really, really interesting granular detail because a lot of these guys had multiple factories. Whereas with this particular earlier piece, that wasn't produced during a time when the RZM was mandatory, you can't identify the exact origin of this piece. So I heard somebody, or I heard of you mentioning somebody earlier, was talking about a Knight's Cross. The same applied for awards, for example. So there was a period in time where any Tom, Dick, or Harry could walk into one of the manufacturer's stores and purchase a Knight's Cross at expense because they were extremely expensive at that time. And they later implemented a system where you actually have to physically present with what was known as a soldbook. The soldbook was like a passport, and within this soldbook you would have all of your awards.
Right. Yeah.
So, for example, if you're issued with a Knight's Cross or with an Iron Cross, second class, first class, or with a specific dagger, you could go in and you could purchase multiples, but you had to actually demonstrate that the Reich had actually physically awarded you with that particular piece. Without that passport, you would not be permitted to exactly. And if you did, you would end up in the gulag basically.
Yeah, yeah.
If you tried to pull a funny.
Honor, basically, stealing honor and valor. So, yeah, makes sense.
Like for your viewers in the States, there's a big thing about honor stealing at the moment. We've got lots of guys who are pretending to be vets. Well, the same applied back then. You would have guys going out and buying an SS uniform and a Panzer badge. If they had the money to do so, and they were going around basically pretending that they were something that they weren't. So that was basically a quality control check, and also to prevent guys from stealing honor.
Cool. Question about the RZM code. When did it start, and when did it finish? Have you got a rough idea about that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So we refer to that as the transitional period. So the early period was between 1933 and 1936. So you've got a demo slide that we had, Hans, that I gave you, and that illustrates some of that. So, yeah, so the early period starts from 1933 to 1936. So what characterizes an early period blade? So we've got thin blades. The hilt is of steel. A very, very low ricasso or a no ricasso. So once again, I'll illustrate this knife over here. You can see that the ricasso is literally a few mil. And it recesses into the actual physical grip. So can you see that clearly, guys?
Yep.
So there is a ricasso present, but it's almost nominal. It's literally a couple of millimeters. Maker marked. So once again, we know that this is early period because there's a maker mark over there on the back, and we've got a motto. Okay, so the motto was absolutely an integral part of those early ones. Now we go into the transitional piece, which we have over here. So we've got the thicker blades. So once again, if we do a base-to-base comparison, you can see here. Is that clear, guys? Yes. So you can see on the transitional one over here, as opposed to the other one over here, the blade is probably a couple of mil thicker in the base, and then it thins out. So I think that the tip of the blade, or towards the tip of the blade, is almost as thick as the ricasso on this one. So this one's obviously not going to have the same strengthening because once again they were producing them at a lower standard. So once again, with the transitional periods, you've got the motto maker, RZM designation. You've got motto with RZM, or you've got no motto with the RZM. So for the transitional period, the RZM is absolutely obligatory because it was compulsory, and you would have gotten into a lot of hot water if you didn't have it. So that was between 1936 and 1940. We don't have an example of a late period blade today to show you, but the blades were thicker. You had the higher ricasso, RZM designation, sometimes not for the later ones, because towards the end of the war they sort of started becoming a lot more chaotic, and they had no motto because this sort of acid etching, it's a very, very specific kind of etching which is extremely labor intensive, and it also had like an effect inside where you would actually physically have a darkening. So they would acid etch them and darken them. So going back into one of your older questions, Hans, it would make sense if they made them cheaper towards the end of the war. But because the Germans are so prideful with their manufacturing, in a lot of instances, instead of actually lessening things, they were making things more complex, more expensive, more laboursome.
That definitely makes sense, as we know, as that they were trying to develop the Maus tank at the time near the end of the war, and it should have been a lot more. If Germany made more Stugs or maybe more Panzer IVs than the Tigers and the expensive tanks, they probably would have done better. That definitely makes a lot of sense there with that comment.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you were saying, I've stood on the Maus. Well, not stood on it. I've stood in front of it in the Kubinka Museum. My wife's Russian, and I've been to Kubinka to actually see the Maus. So next time we've got a presentation, we'll have a lot more time, and I'll put together a slide pack, and I'll show you some photos of my adventures. I can show everybody the actual Goliath and the tank that was commissioned for Hitler's birthday. But yeah, a lot of the things that they didn't make sense, and that actually contributed to them losing the war effort, because they were just so complex and everything was done with perfection. But then we've got these politics aside, these beautiful relics, that really do need to be protected in time, and that's one of the other reasons why I collect, because they're wonderful pieces. They're reminders of history, and we need to rely on people within the Company of Heroes community who are passionate about this sort of stuff to really learn, to identify what's good out there and what's not, and to become custodians for the future, because there aren't many guys that are young like me that are doing this. A lot of the guys from the old guard, a lot of the dealers and the serious collectors have very advanced ages, so it's really important for everyone to have an opportunity, and it really is an elitist club, which is why I thought it would be a great idea to partner up with Hans and to give everybody an opportunity to learn and to be involved. A lot of the dealers are very snobbish, especially when you're looking at the lower end stuff, and they're not prepared to pass on the information. So that's another important thing it's all about.
Definitely experienced that myself when I went to a military shop in Brighton, and yes, so like you say, it was just a load of old boys in there, and I tried to get some information out of them, but they were like, "Oh, he's young, he's got no money, we're not interested." That type of attitude is, outdated, because you want to be investing in the young people, because they eventually will get a job and they eventually will start earning money, and if you turn them away, they'll never come back to your store. So definitely really important to care about younger people wanting to get invested in military artifacts for sure.
Yeah, look, lesson learned, and that happened to me as well. I started off with a beaten up Eastern Front's medal when I first started. I didn't have the money. I was a poor university student, and as I progressed, as I started to get a better income in my boring day job, I was able to maximize and to develop the collection, and hopefully some of you will consider doing that as well. Becoming custodians of these historical relics.
I mean, what I've noticed when I was watching a video yesterday about Hitler Youth Knives is that when it comes to spotting fakes, that's people are always worried when they want to buy a new or start collecting. How can you tell an authentic from a fake? One of the things I saw was that the diamond color for the behind the swastika is silver on some of the fakes, and mostly it'll be gold. But I think even if it is sometimes silver, it still can be an authentic piece, right?
Yeah, look, it's there are no set rules. And look, this is going to sound funny, but even with, for example, with uniforms. So uniforms are something that I tend not to specialize in, because they're very complex, and I'll explain why later. But with a uniform, the best way to determine if something's authentic initially, before investigating anything else, is to close your eyes and to smell it. If it smells like 15 dead soldiers, it's likely going to be authentic. Do you know what I mean? And that's just like it's just a metaphor that I use. But there are lots of different tricks of the trade. I've been doing this for a long time, and I've got a really keen eye for detail. And not everybody has that keen eye. So I guess there are two different types of collectors. There are collectors who are also desktop historians, and who have a genuine interest of understanding the items intimately. And then you've got the other category of collectors where basically they just want to have that assurance that they're going to get the right item every time. They want to pay a bit extra to have that professional consultation and that professionalism behind it, and then they get that guarantee. Nice. So with spotting these, things that I'd look out for are the rivets. So these, two metallic bolts here. Look, there are variations. So once again, you can't hold true to this, but sometimes you'll see daggers with hollow rivets. unless the grip plates have been replaced because the kids chucked it against the tree and the dad at home has done an improv repair back in the 30s. They should be as they are here. Always check the integrity of the diamond. So you'll often see HJs that have been very clumsily repaired, and the diamonds falling out. Check the blade. This one's got a bit of a wobble in it. You can probably, I don't know if you can hear it. I'm just wobbling it around.
Yeah.
That's another thing. Also, odd combinations. So, for example, if you get a dagger that looks like it's brand new, and it says, blood and honor on it, but it doesn't have the corresponding marks on the back, that something's a bit fishy. Pieces that are completely mint in condition can also be a bit alarming, or pieces that are too grimy can be alarming as well. So, for example, a lot of really good imitations for daggers, awards, paperwork, everything come out of Asia, India, and also Eastern Europe. And with a lot of these guys, what they'll do is they'll take a knife like this or an award, they'll dig a hole in the backyard, they'll throw it in for 6 months, they'll put something to accelerate the aging process on it, some sort of an acid, they'll pull it out, and then they'll say that it's a relic. So in the military world, if you find a piece in the battlefield or something that's completely knackered, rusted up and busted up and smashed around, they usually refer to those as field relics. Not as desirable as something like this.
Sure.
But you have to be careful, especially with the relics, because often with relics, it's a method that they use to hide the fact that it's actually a shonky item. Finishes on them and just the overall quality. When you've got a good one, you use that as the basis to assess the next one, and that's how you basically grow in experience over time, because sometimes you'll get really surprised. I've had pieces, for example, shown to me via email from guys who are potentially selling stuff or wanting appraisals, and they look like they're not good, and then when I physically get it in my hands, it's actually really good. So I've got a piece coming from a guy in Queensland next week. It's a Luftwaffe officer's sword, first pattern. And if the audience is interested, I can show that on screen next time, which is a really, really beautiful, beautiful piece.
Got a question here from Howard. He says, "What were the metals used in the blade? What kind of metals are we looking here?"
So the metals should be magnetic, especially with the bolts, but they're all steel. So they're all so typical high quality German steel. I think there's a tagline, a voice line in the game, something about German quality steel. Well, this applies to these. So these daggers are definitely still going to be around long after we're gone. I read a witty comment in the comment section before about using these carpentry knives and in the kitchen and whatnot. You'll laugh at some people who are avid collectors like myself, who have 10, 20, 30 of these, because I know guys who collect nothing but Hitler Youth knives. They will actually have a piece that's a bit ratty, and they'll sharpen the heck out of it, and they'll actually use it in the kitchen. So there's a bloke that I know who actually uses one of these to prepare his dinner every night.
Wow. Hi AJ is saying, how would you polish the blade? I imagine you probably don't, because otherwise that'll mess it up a bit. So
good question. My advice to you: never ever touch anything. So another thing that's extremely difficult to fake on relics, like these that are historical, that are made out of metal, is patina. So, for example, another piece that I'll show throughout the advancement of our series is the Luftwaffe Honor Goblet. Now, you often see these going up for sale at auction houses. They're extremely expensive pieces. They come in two formats. One is made out of 835 silver. 835 silver just means that it's 83.5% silver, and the other percentage is alloy. And then there's another version that's made out of alpaca, which is also known as German silver. Now, you often see guys polishing these. So what will happen is granddad or their great-granddad was a veteran. They were a pilot. They received one of these goblets. The daughter or the son or the granddaughter will pull it out of the cupboard, and they'll put silver all over it. Or they'll scrub it with Ajax or something like that, and it basically strips half of the value. So with these pieces, you leave them as they are. If it's a mint piece, you want to retain it in that mint condition. So if you did have a mint piece similar to this one, for example, and you did want to polish it, it should be available in Europe and also in America and Asia. It's a product that's called Ballistol. Has anybody heard of Ballistol? Very common to use on fishing gear, guns, four-wheel drives. So if you haven't heard of Ballistol, Google it. The best stuff you can use on firearms as well. So I've got an original Kar 98K that I take down to the firing range every now and then, and I use Ballistol to service that too. So Ballistol is a formula that was invented during the First World War by the Germans. They've since sold a patent. I believe it's an American company that makes it now. But it's the best thing that you can possibly use on these things because it still uses the original formula. So if you're using Ballistol on old blades, guns, etc., you're basically using the same chemical formula that's not too harsh that they would have been using 100 years ago, 80, 70 years ago on these historic pieces.
Cool. Nice, interesting. So we've got another question here from Hydra again. He says, what was the purpose of the elaborate-looking guard between the handle and the blade?
So I presume we're talking about this guard here?
Yes, I think that's right. I'm wondering as why that looks so fancy as well.
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty implicit or explicit why it's there. It's there to protect the finger from breaking if you're striking or if you're using this as a combat weapon. That aside, the Germans just like to make everything fancy and sometimes superfluous. There's no reason other than the fact that they just made things that were beautiful and aesthetic, and they do that even today. Would this be the right time for me to showcase the other modern dagger that I have?
Yeah, sure. Let's check out the modern dagger now.
All right, so I'll chuck these on the side. And I hope I'm not talking too fast, guys, because sometimes the information just comes out like a
machine gun.
Yeah, and as I said, look, irrespective of whether or not somebody has something to sell me or if they want to engage me for a certificate or if they want to buy something from me, I always welcome questions. So for me, education is a really, really important part of the journey. And I'll always have time no matter what, irrespective if you're inquiring about a $5 US piece or a $50,000 piece, I'll always give you the time and respect that you deserve. There's no such thing as being too busy. So this is a bit of an unboxing. So I'm not sure if any of the guys out there in the audience have heard of Boker. So Boker is a very, very famous craftsman, or was originally a single craftsman who's developed into a big company. They're now a multinational company. Boker produce knives in the original factory that they produce them since around, I think, 1820, 1830. I'll have to fact check that later. It might have been even earlier. But they also produce stuff in America, and they get a lot of guest bladesmiths working on pieces for them. So this is an annual release that they do that features Damascus Steel. Does everybody in the audience know what Damascus Steel is?
I've heard of Damascus Steel, but I don't know the significance of it.
Okay, so Damascus Steel, it's basically an ancient form of steel crafting that originated in Persia, eons ago, basically. At the time, it was the most advanced, most sophisticated form of steel. Nobody knows exactly how they made it back then. I'll also say that they were making in India as well, so not just in Iran. I'll correct myself. So it was in India, Persia, and it started off, So I guess if you can imagine all of the Teutonics and the Crusaders and the Knights, they were fighting against the Saracens, and they all had the Damascus bladed weapons. So in modern history, they basically rekindled this a couple of centuries ago, and they started to produce the blades again. Even though the carbon content is not as high as what you would find in a lot of modern steels, the edge retention is fantastic on them. They don't require as much sharpening, and you get a beautiful patterned result. So I'll show you how this particular dagger looks like here.
Look at that. Look at the pattern on that.
So just for the audience, that's not etching and that's not painted. It's actually chemical reaction within the steel, and these pieces are folded many times. So this particular one has 600 folds.
Damn.
So you can see the cherry wood there, and also the ebony with the cross hatching on it. So that's not a plastic or a carbon fiber. That's actually ebony that's been cross hatched. And a lot of the high guards, honor guards, personalities and leaders actually had Damascus bladed weapons that were forged for them, and I've got a couple of original World War II German Damascus bladed edge weapons, and if anyone's interested in seeing them, we can showcase a few of those pieces later on down the track, but I just wanted to start off with the basics. So yeah, so that gives you an idea of the level of quality that really goes even into these pieces today. So they're stunning works of art. I mean, I buy. Oh, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, we have a question about how much a piece like this would cost. I think you said earlier it was a unique piece. It's a limited edition, correct?
Yeah, correct. It's a limited edition. I was able to get this particular piece on special, but I believe, let me think, if I convert this into American dollars, I think this particular piece winds up costing around 900 American dollars. But it's one of those things. They're legacy pieces that you keep on, then you pass down to family members, and they're awesome. I mean, I can't exactly imagine cutting my apples with these, but they are practical, and you can use them, and they're just beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful. So they also actually do a modern version. They don't call it the Ss Dagger because that would probably be politically incorrect in this very political world we live in. They call it the Swiss Dagger. But I've actually ordered a Boker, a Swiss Dagger with a Damascus blade. That's due to arrive in October. So when that arrives in October, I'll do a segment comparing the traditional World War II Damascus blade, and I'll do a comparison with the modern Damascus blade as well. So I'll be able to showcase those two. So that gives you a bit of an insight into a modern piece. So I'll just leave that there for a second. Do we have any more questions, guys?
How much? I think you were saying was it 800? USD?
Yeah, about 800, 900 US.
900 USD. But this one was a limited edition. What if it was just like a standard one that wasn't limited edition? Any idea on that?
You can buy Damascus ones from Boker that aren't a part of their premium range, which are made in China. And I think you can pick those up for a few $100 US. But they do make a lot of other beautiful knives that don't necessarily have the Damascus pattern on them. I love the stuff that's intricate.
Oh, a good question here. Yep. Sorry to interrupt you. It says, for World War II, did they actually use Damascus steel for field weapons, or was it just purely for decorative pieces?
No, so as I stated before, all of the edge weapons that you see from World War II, apart from the Kar-98K bayonets, the Luftwaffe machetes, gravity knives, if you've heard of gravity knives, that's something that we'll touch in a different episode. They were all basically ceremonial. So another piece that we have today that I'm going to be showcasing, I was going to hold it for another segment, but I thought that the audience would appreciate it. We're going to be looking at an original SS 1933 dagger. So we've basically gone from the entry level right up to the creme de la creme of daggers. But before we jump onto that one, are there any other questions about what we're looking at the moment? Yeah, and if you can't think of what to ask now, just feel free to just chuck me an email later, and I'll respond the best way that I can. So I'll just put that away. And by the way, if you're handling your stuff at home, I highly recommend that you should use gloves. So you would either be using cotton gloves or gloves that don't contain powder or latex. You want synthetic gloves. You shouldn't be handling these with the oils in your hands. I wash my hands very thoroughly, but I definitely wouldn't be doing it. So just make sure that you do maintain that practice, because the oils from your fingers can actually create a lot of damage on the item, and you'll regret it later. So moving on to the next piece.
Oh, one quick question. We've actually just come in. Stefan's Universe just quickly asked, who founded the company, the Boker company, I believe. I think you were saying it was a, what was the one company you said beforehand? It was like a subsidiary company afterwards?
Yeah, so Boker, they've got different divisions. So all of the companies in Solingen that are still producing daggers today. So Boker still produces, Wusthof still produces, Eichhorn. Eichhorn is one of the most, I'm not sure if any of the viewers have seen the logo before, but it's the most recognizable logo. You see it on t-shirts sometimes. It's a squirrel holding a knife in a vertical position. It's a really cool logo. So they still produce all sorts of different cutleries and frying pans and bits and pieces. But all of these businesses originated as family businesses. So yeah, so Boker still have their Solingen arm of the business. but then they do some special customized daggers in North America, South Africa, and also China as well for the sort of intermediate to lower end market, so that they're a bit more affordable for collectors who don't want to splash out an entire month's salary to buy a piece, basically.
Sure.
Yeah, so shall we move on to the next piece, guys?
Yeah, please do.
Yep. Okay, so I'll move on to the next one. So before we carry on, I will say once again that all of these pieces are categorically authentic. None of these are imitations or reproductions. So I'm not sure how clearly you can see that one there. So this is an original SS dagger. So here we've got the what's known as the SS Rondelle over here, which is very typical of this particular make, and I'll go on to that in a moment. Here we've got, is that clear, Hans? Can you see properly?
Yep, that's good. Yeah, just hold it exactly there. It's perfect. Yeah, we can see the eagle with the swastika that it's holding there.
So one of the key things to look for when you're looking at these daggers, asymmetry and detail. So when you look at this eagle, you can see that it's absolutely perfect in every way, and it's extraordinarily intricate. It's a masterpiece in itself. With a lot of the fakes, you'll see wonky legs. The arms from the swastika have different sizes. They're not symmetrical. The orientation's incorrect. The eagle looks like a griffin or some other stupid creature. It doesn't look like an eagle. Once again, with the SS Sigrunes. So these are known as SS Sigrunes. So they were the official emblem of the Schutzstaffel, or the SS. So they were the most notorious badasses out of all of the guys. They were organized into two different sections. You had the Allemagne SS, which otherwise means General SS. So they were the guys tasked with the general policing and day-to-day activities.
Right.
And then you had the sorry, go on.
I was just saying, cool.
Yeah. And then you had the Waffen SS. So the Waffen SS was the sort of like the crack shot elite forces. So hopefully they're going to maybe you can influence them, Hans, to put some sort of they're not going to call them SS, but it would be awesome to have some sort of an SS team or a Knights Cross Holders unit like what we had in COH1 incorporate into the next game.
Yeah, it's always quite interesting learning about the Waffen SS, because on one hand they're quite fanatical and crazy, and the Wehrmacht was saying they weren't too good of a unit, and then there's others versions of the SS where they were a crack shot unit. So it is interesting learning about the differences between the different forces in the German army during World War II. So yeah, so how would we know which, is there any way indication on the blade here, this dagger, of which maybe officer that had it, or maybe member of the SS that had it, or the division or the company?
So that's a really good question. So we'll probably end up having one entire 2-hour session just on the SS dagger. That's how complicated they can be.
Wow.
To determine originality, there are all sorts of different factors, different makers. If I were to unscrew this piece, which I won't do right now because I don't have the key with me, which can also be very dangerous because you can crack the handle, you've got an internal piece that runs along here, a shaft, which connects to this screw at the end. Now that piece is called a tang. As it departs from the crossguard in here, closer to here, it's got like a cigar cylindrical shape that progressively gets smaller, with a grip around it, which basically provides the grips to screw, or a screw that goes onto this screw here. Now, in some instances, depending on the type of SS dagger, you would have the SS man's numbers stamped potentially on the upper crossguard, and it varied. Sometimes it was on the reverse, sometimes it was on the obverse. I'll get into these markings in a second because this is actually a really rare piece. Sometimes you would have markings on the internal of the crossguard, so you'd have to physically open the crossguard to see if there were anything to designate what unit the guy belonged to. And one thing I'll add is that the Germans were really, really fastidious with keeping records. So all of these pieces are researchable. And this is what really appeals to collectors, as opposed to, say, the Aussie stuff or the Anzac stuff, or the American stuff or the Russian stuff, because they kept such good records. You can actually research them. So for the desktop historian, You can buy a named piece or a piece that has a serial, and then you can go down this rabbit warren of finding out, who this guy was. What did he do? What was his role? Was he a loader? Was he a gunner? Was he a pilot? Was he, involved politically? So it becomes really interesting.
Could we see
Yep.
Could you turn the blade around so we can see what the motto on the blade is?
Yeah, sure.
So it's upside down there. Here we go. Cheers. So what does that say?
So a rough translation of this in English, it would say, "My honor is true," or "My honor is loyalty." Effectively.
Firefly here, who's from Austria, saying, "Loyalty is my honor." That's what he brings that.
Yeah,
cool.
Exactly. So receiving an SS Dagger was a really big deal. This was actually an award that was listed in the Soulbook. So this wasn't just a piece that they would hand out so that you could cut your breakfast up with. Once again, they were issued with unsharpened blades. So this one has been only very, very sort of mildly sharpened. It's more valuable if it doesn't have sharpening to it. So the ones with unmodified blades are the most valuable. You can see here that it's got some of the original cross graining from when it was first produced. So when they were machining these manually, you would have these lines that were formed across the blade. So that's another good sign of originality and the fact that it hasn't been polished too heavily. It's lost some of the color and depth to the original etching. So once again, if you run your finger across this, which I wouldn't recommend doing without gloves on once again, it's actually indented. So the blade itself is raised and this is indented. So if you're looking for an original, this is never painted on. You should actually be able to physically feel that it's grooved and your fingers will sort of sink into it as you're pulling it across. And as you can see, this has genuine, honest runner marks on it. So it's actually been used. So can you see from that angle how it's got this marking across here?
Yeah, it's very clear to see, yeah.
Yeah, so that's been basically scratching against all of the runners on the inside. So if we now flip to the reverse, you can, hang on, let me just get a good shot of that. My light's just shining. Oh,
almost got it.
Yell out when you...
Yeah, that's good. Leave it there, yeah. Perfect.
Okay, cool. So, much like how I described the transitional daggers before with the HJs, this is a transitional dagger with the SS, and it's known as a triple proof dagger, which is extremely rare. This particular dagger is made by F. Herder and Son, so you can see the F. Herder AS.
Yep.
And their logo was the intertwined or the interlinking keys. And you can see there that it's got the SS Schutzstaffel SIG runes on the bottom. Hang on, I'm trying to get the image. Can't get it. It's reflecting. Very hard because it's reflecting. But what I can do is, Hans, I'll take some pictures of all of the pieces today and I'll issue them to you.
Yep.
So if anybody wants pictures, I can send detailed pictures across. So yeah, so drawing back onto the history, the candidates weren't just handed the daggers. They had these ritualistic torchlight ceremonies in front of a shrine in Munich. And these daggers were only presented on the 9th of November every year. So basically, if you missed out on your dagger for whatever reason for that year, you would have to wait till the following year. And it was like a highly emotionally charged ritual. And it was designed to basically take the Germans back to their ancient Teutonic ancestry, which is what they were trying to replicate. And then they did a pledge of an oath to the SS. Hence the inscription, which the viewer translated to us a bit more accurately than I did before. So this was actually not only a dagger; it didn't have just a functional piece. Sorry, a functional purpose. It was actually an award, and it was held very, very, very dearly. Next time we do a session, I'll also present the officer's version. So this version is known as the M33, and there's also an M36 with a very, very elaborate chain that comes off the scabbard, which I'll present to you guys next time that we do a session.
Got a question from Sir Draglor. Draglor is saying, there is no fuller on the blade?
Sort of translate that is, can you be a bit more descriptive? What is he referring to? Is he referring to a stopper here? Is he referring to a stopper on the crossguard, perhaps?
I'm not sure. We'll see. We'll just wait for him to respond. While we wait for him to respond real quick, So when you say it was these blades were giving a ceremony, was it every single SS member that would get something like this, or is it only like officers or something? Because you just said there's specific officer blades as well. It looks like something this fancy, this pristine and prestigious would only be would be given to some higher ranked SS members. So
no, every officer, every single SS member would receive one of these daggers. So they would have their own independent criteria. So, for example, some units might have required you to be in the SS for a year, 2 years, 3 years before you received it. But this was basically a badge of acceptance and a badge of honor. So there were other similar items like this as well. For example, there's an award known as the Julakter. So I'm sure that the German and the Austrian viewers know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a ceremonial Teutonic candle holder, which was also seen as an award. There were special belt buckles. There was the SS Heinrich Himmler Totenkopf ring, which is one of the most hallowed items that you could possibly receive, and we can do a session on those in the future as well. So there were lots of different awards. So there was a lot of different exciting stuff that they could sort of work towards and receive. But the SS was very ritualistic. It was all about symbols, signs, and going back into that Germanic and Viking culture, the Teutonic culture. So it was all about basically semiotics and symbolism. Symbolism was a really important part of the SS, and this is where the Wehrmacht clashed with the SS as well. The Wehrmacht was the old guard, the imperialist Germans. There were the traditionalists, and then you had the SS that had a completely different sort of revivalist / revisionists of the old Germanic tribal ways, and going back into that Viking culture, which is where the clash came from.
So here we go. Sir Dragdord has just said a fuller is a rounded or beveled longitudinal groove or slot along the flat slide of a blade.
Yes. Okay, so sorry, you're referring to a different terminology, potato. He's referring to a blood groove. So no, the dagger doesn't have a blood groove because it was intended as a ceremonial piece. So what he's referring to is a groove that runs basically along the blade, so that if you're penetrating an animal or a human or whatever, or one of your local politicians or members of the parliament, you can basically eject the knife without it being stuck in. So I guess if you want me to go into the grisly detail of it, if you're penetrating the flesh will tend to constrict around the blade, and then it's very hard to remove it, and it can actually become completely wedged in. Whereas the blood groove, or in this case we refer to as the fuller, you would be able to eject the blade with significantly more ease by tugging on it. So no, and that's another thing, because they were designed purely as ceremonial. And another thing that I'll mention about these is, so this particular piece here, and many of the Hitler Youth knives were actually brought back. I won't say that they were stolen. They like to say that they were souvenired by American soldiers, Australian soldiers, British, French, etc. So this particular piece here, along with all of the knives that you saw, these actually were trophy bringbacks from the war. So this particular piece would have been stolen either on the battlefield or by an American soldier going through people's possessions and belongings, raiding houses, taking these off soldiers, because soldiers did wear them to battle. Even though they were ceremonial, they did still wear them. The Germans were extremely big on decorum. Everything was all about looking the part. So a lot of the guys did actually physically wear them out into battle, and that's where they got lost and taken. But a lot of the soldiers who were wealthier actually had double ups or triple ups of these pieces. So even though this was an award, they may have had another 2 or 3 of the same blade back at home if they could afford to buy them.
Damn, wow. So you've got Megasils asks, weren't there entire divisions of Waffen SS? Does that mean that there are tens of thousands of those made, or are these much more rare for some kind of service?
No, that they would have had a lot of them. A lot of them were made, but then once again, it comes down to makers. So there are makers that are rarer. Then you've got special blades as well. There are versions, for example, that have highly specialized, intricate and detailed cross guards. There are versions that are Damascus bladed, and then you've got all of the different versions. So you've got the early ones, you've got the transitionals and the late pieces, exactly like what we articulated early with the HJs. A lot of them were lost to the conflict, and look, they still dig up these pieces all the time. If you YouTube videos, you get these videos
terrible condition,
where the exactly. Russians are digging these out of their grandparents' backyards with full of rust, and also the Russians captured a lot of them. They destroyed a lot of them. They melted them down. Don't forget that at the conclusion of the war, the Russians took approximately 3 million prisoners, and I think only around 6,000 of those prisoners actually made it out alive. All of them were in full combat gear. So Russia is a really good place to buy stuff, and there's a really, really high prevalence of finding good stuff there because they seized a lot of it. So as part of the spoils of war. So
must have been a big score to a GI to find one of these. Indeed. I mean, actually, how much does a piece like this cost? I think that's what a lot of people are probably wondering right now.
Yeah. So going back to the GIs, they did. And a lot of the GIs were actually stationed in and around Germany for a really long time after the conflict, as we're all aware, because we had the East and the West. They were segregated into the Allied side and the Communist side. And with these particular daggers, because they were highly prized, a lot of the companies that were manufacturing these during the war were still manufacturing them after the war. So you've got to be really careful that you don't end up paying top dollar for a piece that was actually a post-war piece, which is basically not valueless, but worth nothing next to what one of these would be worth. I was in a rush today, so this is normally a display piece for me, and I forgot to bring the Scabbard for the show. But this does have a Scabbard. The Scabbard, for those who don't know, is a device that protects the blade. For a piece like this, it really depends with regards to value. At auction, given that it is a triple maker marked or a triple proof dagger, it wouldn't be unusual for a piece like this to attract around the, I would say, 6,000 to 8,000 euro mark.
Wow. Damn,
including auction house commissions. And so when you're buying from an auction house, guys, you always pay commission. And the commission price for an auctioneer is globally set to around 22.5% on top of the purchase price. And they're becoming rarer and rarer. When I first started buying pricier pieces like this years ago, they were probably around 45 to 50% cheaper than what they are now. So my suggestion is start even with basic pieces and then progressively build the collection up. So at the moment with my collecting, I'm at a level where almost none of my income goes back into the pieces that I acquire. I've got so many pieces in my collection that I basically monetize my collection, and my collection pays for itself because I do trades or I sell pieces that I no longer want. Sorry, to acquire the pieces that I do want.
So we can see here, guys, the business card as well for Whispers from the Past Militaria. It's a new company, and I believe you'll have your website up, I believe, in about 4 weeks or something, you said?
Yeah, that's right. Well, look, I've got a boring sort of desky academic job during the day. In Australia, we've got some pretty crazy lockdowns at the moment, and military is something that I'm really passionate about. When I first started off, I didn't have this level of help from anybody or this insight from somebody that I could relate to, and I did get ripped off big time on a couple of occasions. So I suppose my mission is to provide an honest service. I have the ability to buy things from people. I have the ability to sell things, and if I don't have something in stock, I've got contacts all over the world to find them. So actually, speaking of which, Hans, do we have any Aussie listeners tonight?
Possibly. It's quite late in where you are at the moment, so it's unlikely we have many Australians watching. But if we do, and you're interested in collecting World War II militaria, Gerard is your man. Go reach out to him. He'll help you out and help you on the way when in collecting. Oh no, there we go. We have Tempest Iris is in Australia right now watching. Hello, Tempest.
Oh, nice one. Whereabouts are you from, Tempest?
New South Wales.
That's awesome. I'm from Melbourne, so there you go. Good luck in New South Wales. It's the battle zone at the moment. So there you go. Spread the word, guys. and I'm a massive Company of Heroes fan. I've actually done a few online games with Hans where I've been absolutely roasted, but loved every minute of it. So definitely well worth doing a few sessions. So I think we've got a few other surprises installed for the guys today. Did you want me to move on to the pack 36 round?
Oh yes, we've got special surprise, guys, tonight. We've got pack 36 round with something unique about it, which you don't normally see. Here it comes.
Yep. So this isn't what you see in the game. You see the bigger brother. So this is well, it was used all throughout the course of the war, but this was the primary anti-tank round that they were using early on. It originates from a piece called the Pack 36. It was used in a few other pieces as well. As you can see, it's got a tungsten tip. Very, very, very rare to find one of these intact with the original tungsten tip still embedded. It's actually got the swastikas and the Waffen marks all around here. You can't see it on the camera, so I can provide Hans with photos. But can you imagine getting hit with one of these at how many ever thousands of feet per second, and it has to have a swastika on it? And that's how methodical the Germans were. They were really, really methodical with the stuff, and it's crazy when you think about it that they went to that detail. So this is dated as well. You can't see in that shot, I don't think, but I will send them once again to Hans. So this particular one has the swastika on the back. It's got the caliber on it. It's got the year as well, and the weight of the round. So the cannon that used to fire this bad boy was colloquially named the door knocker, because when the Russians introduced the T-34s, it was completely bloody useless against the T-34, and they were just bouncing off. So I'm pretty sure that during the game, when you get those frustrating bounces, it's probably because you're firing off the Pack 36, not the Pack 40. There you go. So fancy being hit by one of these when you're traveling around in your car.
Oh, massive. So where did you actually acquire that from?
I was actually able to get this from a barn find, which was really rare. When I got it, it was completely covered in oxidization, so I had to clean this thoroughly. You couldn't even see any of the markings on it, so I polished it back up again. It's really rare to find these. At the moment, it would be illegal to import something like this in Australia, given that we've got really, really crazy laws over here. So I'm assuming that this probably was a veteran bringback, or it could have been when a lot of the Germans migrated to Australia. So we've got a thing that's known as the Snowy Mountain Hydro Electricity Scheme. At the time, it was one of the modern wonders of the world. It's this massive hydroelectrical plant, and we basically used German know-how in Australia after the war to build it. And a lot of the guys that had served in the Wehrmacht and in the SS and Luftwaffe Kriegsmarine came over to Australia to start a new life off, and they brought their wares with them. So I'm pretty sure that this would have originated back in the day, probably in the suitcase of a soldier or a veteran that would have fought in the war.
Oh, fascinating.
As a souvenir. But yeah, really hard to find. It's still intact. So this is inert, which means that it's had the charge and the powder taken out of it, so it can't be fired. But yeah, other than that, it's in completely original condition. So I thought everybody would relate to it and love to see it.
Why would a veteran bring back an anti-tank round? Why? Well, because it's cool, man. It's a piece of history, dude. As with anyone bringing back stuff, it's like a war trophy, It's that kind of thing, to be able to say, look, this is what I've grabbed. Maybe it just was the right type of size for a suitcase when he brought it back. I don't know. But that's what happened.
Exactly. Well, I guess every veteran would have loved to have brought back a Damascus bladed honor sword or a Knight's Cross, but there weren't many of them, so they took whatever they could. They were basically stuffing their bags and stealing everything. And I think the Australian soldiers were allowed to bring back 3 or 4 pieces that they found there, and what they would do is they would pack suitcases and send them back home to their families, and they would basically take whatever they could. They used to take street signs, plaques off buildings, window frames, panels. For example, when they raided Hitler's Berghof, they were taking they even took his keys, his locks, his napkins, silverware, everything you could possibly imagine was stolen and looted. Anything's possible, guys, and that's the thing. I guess it's up to the imagination of the individual to sort of dream up whatever they can and do the research, and that's what makes Militaria such such a cool hobby. Hans and I are hoping to do a collaboration well into the future. I guess you could say we've become very matey over time. And the first thing that I'd like to do is to present Hans with an Iron Cross second class for himself as a gift from Whispers Militaria. So this is going to be sent out to him in the mail as a personal present from myself to thank him for the contribution to the community. I think it's about time somebody gave him a bloody Iron Cross second class for all of the hard work and passion and diligence that he's shown our community. So that's going to be featured for him. So that's a gift, and awesome. I'll do a bit of history on that next time. And we've got some exciting news also. In addition to that particular piece that I'm presenting to Hans as a present, there are going to be several other crosses as well. I've got them all here that are going to be presented for a prize draw, and also I believe Hans is going to be giving one of these crosses away as a first prize for a tournament that's going to be coming up in the near future.
Yeah, so the tournament, guys, for the I was thinking giving away either the second class Iron Cross on the left there to the winner of our big community tournaments that we're doing. So we're going to have 7 more tournaments, and then the 8 winners of those tournaments are going to be put into the final tournament, which is to be a cash tournament as well. And the first place prize will also go away with this awesome second class Iron Cross for their own personal collection, which is sick. So really excited to tell everybody this now.
Yeah, we just wanted to do something different. So look, guys, spread the word to everybody about the upcoming tournament, please. And, Hans really does put a lot of work and passion into this, and I put an enormous amount of work and passion. I've been researching this for a long time, and, I don't get paid for it. I want to sort of turn this into my dream and do this as a profession, much like how Hans is chasing his dream to become such a professional with his streaming and his gaming. And we also wanted to give one of these away as a prize draw. We're yet to work out what that prize draw is going to be, but we didn't want to basically limit these just to the elite players, because it'll just end up in the hands of an elite player. We want to give everybody the opportunity to own one of these crosses as well, which is why we'll be doing a special prize draw and an entry to have the opportunity to own one of these original pieces. So these pieces are also going to come with one of these wonderful cases, and also an original certificate of authenticity, which I'll draft up so you can see that you've got the tiger in the background on the certificate, and that'll come from Whispers from the Past Militaria Complete to actually authenticate the piece, so that there's no confusion in further down the track that it is actually an original piece and it's being certified.
There we go. And the way you certify these items is from your own knowledge and also from your contacts as well. Could you just maybe list off some of the names that maybe people in the chat might be familiar with if they already known to be collecting military items?
Yeah, correct. So I'm a very close personal friend of Mr. Don Boyle, who's from Pennsylvania. Don is one of the most prolific members of the community. He's a Vietnam veteran and a historian. He's written many books. He's appeared in all sorts of history programs and TV shows. So when I first got to know Don, I used to basically just harass him with random emails, and he would never answer me. And then eventually started paying attention, and we've actually become the best of mates. And I regularly send him, I don't know if any of you guys know these products, but I send him Vegemite and Caramello koalas and other Aussie specialties that his grandkids love. So we've got a really good friendship. Maybe we should give away a. Actually, you know what? We'll give away just as a bit of a meme gift. We'll give away a Vegemite for the silliest player of the tournament as well.
I like that. Yeah.
So I reckon so. For the craziest play of that particular tournament, I'll send Hans a tub of Vegemite and some Caramello koalas as a wooden spoon prize. And a G43s for the next tournament, guys. But look, if we can generate enough interest and support out of these to help me along the way and to support Hans as well, there's no reason why the prize draws can't get bigger. And if we can get more interest in these, well, next time we'll be handing out a Iron Cross first class, and the sky's the limit. So get behind this and let's make it interesting. I don't think any other streamers have this sort of combo happening at the moment, and it would be nice to incorporate some real life history with the game as well, to put some context behind everything that that we love.
Indeed. I mean, now that Company Heroes 3 has been announced, it'd be great if we could maybe feature some of the medals and equipment that was used in the Italian front. I think that would be a really cool feature going forward down the line. And yeah, I just love the thing. So basically, this is what we will do. Try and do this maybe every fortnight, guys, for at least for the first 2 months. So the next time I'll do this is about 2 weeks from now, and it'll be on a Saturday. So, well, actually, that being said, in 2 weeks' time, there's going to be a tournament that I'm going to be taking part in. So we might have to maybe do it on the Friday. So let's say maybe the 3rd of September Friday. Does that work? The same time for you?
Yeah, look, let's. I reckon that another important thing is to wait for the parcel. So I'm going to be shipping off the parcel on Monday, and it would be great for you to be able to actually physically show the guys on the stream the parcel. And once again, tell all of your mates we want to get thousands of people watching the stream if we can. Just generate a bit of buzz. Tell everybody about it. We'll be showing some really cool stuff. And Hans, would it be okay with you if we did a poll with regards to what I'll be showcasing next? I've got some ideas in mind.
I'm more than happy to put a poll up on YouTube and on Twitch now as well. If you've got some ideas, just drop them down, or I can put the poll up and see what people say, and I can get those results back to you promptly.
Yeah, so I've got a few things in mind, and I've, for example, just one idea. I've got some original Rommel signatures and documents pre-war. And also wartime as well, so that ties into the Africa. I can show the audience some Panzer badges. I've got some really cool stuff in mind that I can show. So Hans and I'll put some stuff together, and we want your input as fast as possible, and I'll prepare something. And yeah, we can do a G43 eventually as well. I don't have one because it's not legal to own one in Australia. Otherwise, I would have one. But I'm knowledgeable on the subject matter, and once again, we'll cover whatever you guys want. Just to provide you some insight and to get you excited about the game.
Awesome. I'm just going to post the link in chat right now for the Gumtree ad for the company, Whispers of Militaria, Whispers of the Past Militaria. Go check that out. Gerard will be getting himself his own website shortly as well, so all that information and stuff will be on there. But if you guys are interested and want to start, having chats with Gerard right now about items that you might want to purchase, also what he's got in the collection, what he might be selling, or maybe you want to sell something to him, do please reach out to him. He's very interested. So yeah, there's the link there. And have you got your email as well that you want to pop into the Twitch chat so people can contact you on that as well?
Yeah, it's on. Have you got my business card there, Hans, or the image of it? Hang on. Ugh.
I've got it.
Should I type it out? Yeah.
I've got it on my computer. 2 seconds.
Yeah, if you want to flick it up there, guys, and if you've got any questions about today's presentation, or if you've got suggestions about what you want to see next time, we can pretty much cover anything. We can cover the Luftwaffe, the Kriegsmarine, which is often not touched upon, SS. Here, you let me know what you want to dive into, and we'll cover it.
So whispersmilitaria@outlook.com, is that correct?
Yep, that's the one.
There you go. There's the email there, guys, if you want to go reach out there. So once again, guys, if you just tuned in, these 4 crosses that you see here, 2 of them are from pre-war, the Imperial crosses. You can see this is 1813, 1812 on there, so they're quite old. It's actually interesting. I feel like they're actually cheaper to buy than the World War II ones. Is that right? From my knowledge in the past.
It depends which one you get. So once again, we'll touch on this next time, but there are lots of variations. So one of these is also being gifted to Hans, and the one that's being gifted to Hans is this one here, and it's actually made out of 800 silver, and that would have been a private purchase that would have been done through a jeweler. And a lot of the guys who were a bit swanky and suave and wanted something a bit more special would actually wear their cross proudly, but they would get custom ones made. So back in the day, that probably would have cost 3, 4, 5 months' salary to get something like that made up. And they're actually quite hard to find. So they really vary. So you've got the run-of-the-mill ones, and then you've got ones that are more special. Here we've got a Yonkers EK2, and we've also got a Klein & Quenzer EK2. So the EK2 is a shorthand for the Iron Cross second class, and these are the Imperial EK2s. yeah, we'll do an entire session just on Iron Crosses.
Yeah, that'll definitely be a lot of people will love to see more about that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so yeah, we'll get next session. We'll try, or maybe afterwards in the future, we'll talk about the Iron Crosses, the different variants, because there's like second class, first class, Knights Cross ones, gold, silver leaves, you know, oak leaves with swords, things like that as well. How, you know, one would get awarded a certain medal over another. Like what would classify, you know, getting a Knight's Cross, Iron Cross, for instance. You know, how they were worn during combat, that kind of thing. Those questions. How to tell a real one from a fake, things like that as well. So yeah, all that to look forward to in the near future, guys. When is the next session? I will let you guys know. But I think we'll try and see if we can peg it for the 3rd of September. But again, we've got to wait. Depends how long it takes for these medals to get shipped to me from Australia. So it could be maybe a week or two. We'll see. But hopefully we'll be able to have something ready for you guys soon. And if you guys want to know about that date, I will be posting on my Twitter, my Facebook, my YouTube, and also on Twitch. I'll be advertising it, so don't worry, you shouldn't miss it. As long as you're following me on those things here's my social media. Follow me on there. You shouldn't miss out on the next time we do another talk about military artifacts.
Yeah, awesome, guys, and give us plenty of feedback. You know, what didn't you like about my presentation? What did you like, and what do you want to see more of? And hopefully, I'm speaking clearly, and everybody can understand. And once again, feel free to contact me directly, and I can help you with anything that you need with your military history inquiries.
Oh, doesn't look like anyone's got any more questions. So I guess I think I'll just end there. Gerard, thank you so much for taking the time to give you an awesome presentation today. And yes, guys, please give us that feedback, important feedback. Let me know what you liked about the presentation. I'll try and edit this stream here and put it on YouTube as well for the YouTube audience, so they've got that to look forward to.
Yeah, that'll be awesome.
So,
and look, it'll only get better, guys. This was very ad hoc. For those of you who don't know, Melbourne's in a really heavy lockdown at the moment. I was going to do a proper presentation, and I was going to get a graphic designer to get some things up and running. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to do that, so we had limited resources. But yeah, things will only get better, and if there's a demand out there, we'll keep doing it for you and bringing you more sessions into the future. So hopefully everybody enjoyed the time.
All right,
thanks, guys, and I'll talk to you tomorrow, Hans. Thank you very much, and I'll give you a buzz tomorrow.
Awesome. Take care, dude. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
All right. Cheers. Bye.
So, guys, thank you so much for watching the video. If you did enjoy it, please do subscribe, and please leave some feedback in the comment section below about what you thought of this stream, this video. What you like, what you didn't like, and also we're going to be putting a poll up on YouTube very shortly asking you what new artifact we should cover in our next video. Also, please do check out the description section below to see the link to Gerard's website, as well as his email if you want to reach out to him and ask and inquire about military artifacts yourself. And yeah, thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.